Welcome to the Startup Grind.
And so that comes back to balance, right? Because if you think about it, at the end of the day, and this is coming from a financial advisor like myself, money are just tools. They're really just tokens. And I might have a little bit more, she might have the most, and all of you have some, and we're really just moving these tokens around, right? But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is really the people that surround us when we really need them, right? And so you don't want to give up that. So the matter of balance is you put together a game plan and you get really, really focused and really organized. So what's most important? So in my life at this point, the most important thing, don't tell my partner this, is my kids. My family comes first, right? He knows, I'm kidding. My kids are the most important thing. So that means in the morning, I get up, I feed the baby, then the next one wakes up, I feed him, the next one gets, it's like ongoing. And then, by the time I get into work, the sun's already been out for a long time, the market's been up, but you just make decisions. And then during work hours, when I'm at work, I'm just plowing hard. I actually don't get calls from home because they know that during work time, mommy's making money for Legos, right? So you can't be calling. And then after work, I'm home. I try to leave the phone plugged in its charger. It works 90% of the time that I don't touch it. And then they start going to sleep. They do. They could start going to sleep. 7:30, one goes to sleep. 8:30, one goes to sleep. And at that point, then as it gets there, and I start working again. And that's something that a lot of you in this room know. When you have kids, you become more powerful once again. So you don't need as much sleep, right? So when the kids wake up in the middle of the night, well, you're already up. You might as well work. So, and that's really how you juggle until they go off to college, right? That's right, right?
Right. Yeah. So. Well, one thing I really admire about her was the first time we met, she was like, "Oh, I have to go at 4:30. That's my stop time because that's family time." So at 4:30 every day, she leaves the office and goes and spends time with her kids from like 4:30 to probably 8:30 till they go to sleep, and then she goes and starts working again. But she literally leaves at 4:30.
Yeah.
She's out the door.
Yeah, and I don't drink caffeine, so.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about? Let's talk a little bit about business. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about how you can impact your industry, mainly with some of the projects you're working on. You might want to share some of that. She's got a lot going on.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, our industry is a really fun industry. I work with a lot of our clients are CEOs of major tech companies. We have a lot of clients in the entertainment business, and we have a lot of clients in the press industry, and it really just kind of evolved that way. That wasn't really what we work with clients of all walks of life, but it just kind of evolved to this. And one thing that Brandon and I have talked about for years is what can we do to really make an impact? Something that a lot of you share in this room, I have a lot of friends in here, and I'm thinking, we've talked about this, is how can we make a difference? Because it's really not about success. It's really about what value you could provide to those around you, right? And one thing that's really near and dear to my heart is education. Because it doesn't matter how successful we are today, if we don't share something or leave something for the future, things are changing, the world's changing, we all know that. Everybody in this room, technology has changed for good or bad, and there's some crazy people out there, but the main thing that we know is with an education, there's a better chance there'll be less crazy people out there, right? So one thing that I kind of shared with you in the beginning was, while I was at UCLA, the reason why we created this television audience production company is not a glamorous thing. It was because simply I didn't have money to pay for college, so I had to work. I was working to pay for college. I was working for gas. I was working to pay for the dorm and everything else. So I think about what it is that we can do today, and one thing that Brandon and I came up with was, how all of us at some point have worked at companies, either our own company or someone else's company. And many of us have these things called 401ks or retirement plans. There's another kind of plan called the 529, which is an education savings account. Many of you have heard of them. The 529 is just a tax code. That's where it came from. But do you know that actually every company could have one of these plans at the company? So you as an employee, whether you be the person who takes out the trash or you be the CEO, you can actually put in money into a 529 college savings account while you're employed at the company from day one, so that by the time your child or your grandchild or yourself decides to go to college, those monies would have grown 100% federal tax free. It exists today, but not very many companies use it. Pretty much nobody uses it. Nobody even knows about it. So my goal is to actually take this nationwide. So we have reached out to all the major press leaders to team up, and they're really excited about it. And we've been going to Silicon Valley, up in the valley, because they're really open and excited about this. So we're trying to launch this, so that we're hoping that every child in the US will have something before they go to college. So it's a little bit easier.
I love that. How did you build your alliances, your relationships? I mean, if you as a young, college student, how do you connect? How did you get into the movie, television industry? How did that happen? Was it people you met? Was there a secret? How do you make those connections?
The secret is working for free. So, I mean, a lot of you in here know that, but that's really the truth. I mean, I didn't go into the television industry thinking I was going to work in the television industry. I actually started on a TV show called Jones and Jury, starring Star Jones. And actually, I went there to do legal research. And because I thought, I'm Asian, so we're only allowed 3 professions: doctor, attorney, or engineer, otherwise failure. So basically, wasn't too, once I went to UCLA, I realized I wasn't going to be a doctor really quick, way too competitive. So then I started reading books. I really loved poli-sci. So my parents were like, great, lawyer, right? Or there's still hope for you. So I went to work at this Jones and Jury TV show as a doing legal research. I didn't even do 10 minutes of legal research. And they said, hey, you, UCLA, we need someone to be a page. I'm like, oh, page, that sounds really glamorous, right? So the page is a person who walks the person from the audience to the restroom, and back to the chair, and to the restroom. And then you get a cup like this, and you take it around and you collect gum from all the audience members. That's what a page is. And I was like, oh, this is great. I was working on the first day. So little by little, working really hard as a page, needed a lot of IQ. All of a sudden, basically, someone in the room realized that I was pretty good at being a page. So got promoted, and long story short, basically someone said, if you start an audience production company, I will send you all my shows. So basically, while I was working in television, I was filling about 1,000 seats per day, 3 times a day, 6 days a week. So I was just moving people. And I learned really quickly, because I was like the token Asian in the room. Of every production that I ever did, I was always a token Asian. So it was a good thing, because I was stand out. But what I did learn from that is I started realizing what made the audience tick. So American's Funniest Home Videos, if you ever watch the audience, you can see who's where. And I'll tell you a little bit a secret. If you scan the audience, the first 3 rows look fantastic. They're in suits, they're good looking, they look like, ex-NFL players, and then everybody else in the back looks normal. But what happens is you realize that, how people feel and they react is really important. So that emotion is what we were looking for. So as it came to making relationships, that's kind of how I learned that. My parents, helped me along the way as well, because they had a background in real estate, which, anybody in real estate, they know how to make friends. But then coming to now, basically, I have friends like Naomi, I have tons of friends. And thanks to that, a little pure luck, and a love of the internet and Mr. Google, now I have what they call the Golden Rolodex. And the beautiful thing about the Golden Rolodex is all of a sudden, you become really popular really fast. So it does help. It is true that we manage money for some celebrities and some professional athletes, and these are the people that we kind of spend time with. And all of a sudden, we become really popular. But the one thing is, I spent a lot of time taking good care of my friends. And that's what I would say is, my circle of friends isn't that great, but each of my friends is just solid. Like people like Naomi. So my motto in life is pretty much this, that if you're good to me, I'll be 10 times better to you. for sure, and I don't mean it. So you need me there, I'm there on time. I'll be there for you every single time. Anything you need, if you're a friend, I'll deliver for you. And with that, I don't think you can really fail. I think the people who fail are people who just don't show up, or just, they're just not honest. And you can see through people just like that, right?
Yeah.
You know that. We talk about that all the time, right?
We won't talk about that here.
Okay.
What do you think about entrepreneurs starting their companies in Orange County? Like, what do you feel about, people starting their companies here? A lot of times, especially in tech too, people are like heading out. They're like, oh, I can't make it here. I've got to go to Silicon Valley. How do you feel like Orange County sets the stage for like entrepreneurs? I mean, you're here, your company's here.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see more startups and businesses here. This is, in my opinion, it's business heaven. It's a wonderful place because not only do you have like the airport right here, you have perfect weather, you have the beach, you have business leaders here. One thing that I think that we need more of, there's certain things that, because I actually fly up to Silicon Valley regularly. I have a lot of notable clients up there, and honestly, there's a lot of reasons why everybody that I go to Las Vegas, I come to Orange County, everyone says we want to be the next Silicon Valley. And I think absolutely we are probably at a better position to do that than anywhere else because it's a great place to do business. There is definitely, there's the wonderful universities here, right? There's multiple great universities here, so you can plug talent. You've got great leaders here, you've got financial institutions, you've got techs, and there's a lot of people that want to help. But I think what we need to do is we also need to bring technology education to schools. And that's a big thing because if you don't do that, what's going to happen is in Silicon Valley, there's a reason why leaders, we all grow up at some point, right? Those of us in this room, or I shouldn't say, those of you in this room, you're in 20s, you're doing awesome things, but eventually you're going to start growing up and you're going to have kids and whatnot. And that always, you're going to want your kids to be exposed to the right circle of friends, right? You want to be hanging out with Mark Zuckerberg's friends, right? So it's important that I think, education-wise, we have that in mind, and we become leaders and good stewards to our children and the rest of the population, so that way more businesses will want to come here, because it's not just about where business is. It's really the whole lifestyle, right? But who wouldn't want to live here? I mean, you can go to Vegas and go to the beach on the same day and ski, right? 3 things in one day.
Yeah.
It's like utopia.
Is there any must-do item that you think an entrepreneur, CEO, business owner should do, like join certain groups, read certain books, anything like that's worked for you?
I think the most important thing is don't be afraid to fail. Don't even think about that. There's no possibility, okay? You're just gonna kill it and you're gonna rock it. And if you always have that mindset, then there's really no reason you can't be successful. But it has to be like, you need to sleep, eat, and drink it. And you need to focus. Pick one thing and just be so good at it. And like really, and if it's not something that you basically can wake up and get excited to do, no matter what, then you should leave it and move on to something else. But it should be one thing. Don't go over here and all of a sudden look over here and go. But you have to pick one thing, and you have to surround yourself with good people. And the most important thing I would say is always give before asking. Because if you always go with that mentality, and if you always put yourself in whoever your audience is, whether it be a client, a customer, whoever it is you're trying to get business from or funding from or budget from, always put yourself in their shoes. Our industry is really interesting because our industry, typically when you meet with a financial advisor, it's very one-sided, right? You sit in front of me and I said, okay, great, John, so I see you want me to help you manage your money. They're like, yeah, I'm gonna retire and these and things. I'm like, okay, well give me all your statements and I'll help you manage your money, and you'll pay me a retainer fee, and it's very one-sided. It's basically me winning. I mean, you're winning because we're helping you manage money well, but really, at the end of the day, I'm winning, right? That's like typical. But if you think about it, that doesn't make us very interesting people. It doesn't make me a very happy advisor, to tell you the truth. I feel kind of crappy if that happens. So what I try to do is, and I tell everybody, is put yourself in their chair. I used to be a business owner. I used to run a very successful business. Was in when we were in a television audience production company, everybody wanted us. We were like the kid on block. Every show, Gladiator, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, everybody wanted us. And so that felt good. But why is it that I work in this industry and I don't have that feeling? And that's because it's a very one-sided relationship. So change it. So what we do now is when I work with a client, Brandon and I sit in front of a client, we say, okay, do we want him as a client? Let's think about that. How are we going to add value to him in multiple? Of course, we're going to do great jobs managing the money, but there's so much more we can do for him. For example, we have a client who's a movie director, right? And let's say she's up for contract negotiations, so we're helping her evaluate her contract. Well, wouldn't it be great if we called the other studio that we work with and tell them to offer her a contract as well, so she would have 2 competing offers? And then we could say, well, instead of options, we want stock. So basically, put our clients first. We think about adding them more value, giving them more business. And how is it, like, let's say I have a client who's a startup company. Maybe that person would like to meet another really, really talented startup who, could add or could work with them, build alliances with them. So we're always trying to look at things from the standpoint of a client. So I think if you always do that, your business will rocket. Just always don't look at every relationship and think, oh, wow, I met him, he was a nice guy, but next. Because if you do that, then what was the point of meeting them? If you look at every relationship going in and say, wow, he's phenomenal. I loved spending time with him and lunch with him. How can I help him? How can I add value and really help him do his dream? Because if I can help his dream, all of a sudden we're on the same side of the table. Do I worry that when he brings in his first 100 million, he won't call me? I don't even worry. That's not even a thought. Because you know what? He's going to make 100 million one day because he's an amazing person. I love him to death, and I'm going to help him. Then sooner or later, it'll come back to you. So now, luckily, Brandon and I don't look for clients anymore. Clients come to us. So a lot of people say, how did you get this person as a client? How did you get that person as a client? Oh, I just saw that person on TV. How did you guys sign that person? I said, well, we just basically put ourselves in their shoes. So regardless of what industry you are, if you always go with that mentality, always go with the you mentality and not me, I think you'll kill it. And I proved, because it was 2 different industries, one television and now finance. It couldn't be more different. And it worked both times.
So how does Winnie define success? What's success mean to you?
Success is, I guess for me, it's having the freedom to do what I want to do and not having to do things because I have to do things. So right now, now I just do whatever makes me happy. And we work with clients that we like. We work with people that we like. And that's it. I can actually give so much more time to my friends and my family and more energy. And now I think I have a whole new philosophy. It used to be, we work with a lot of charities, we work with startups. Everybody's asking you for something, and I always tell people, actually, the thing I'm going to give you is the thing that I think is the most valuable that I can never get back, which is my time, right? So I think the biggest gift now is be able to have the luxury of selecting time to give to people.
I love that. I mean, she does spend a lot of quality time with her friends and a lot of new connections and people that you meet. Do you have a favorite quote?
Well, there was a really great quote from Albert Einstein, but I don't remember verbatim. But basically the idea was that, don't focus on success, but always focus on value in life. And I always remind myself of that daily because I think that's really the secret sauce. I think if you ask the people who've really made a difference, like if you look at Tony Hsieh, who founded Zappos, that was Tony Hsieh's second win. The first business he already sold for over almost $250 million. The second was over $2 billion when he sold Zappos to Amazon. And if you talk to him, you'll realize from Tony would always tell you, it was just his goal to fix something and make people happy. It didn't hurt that it made him really wealthy, and now he's spending all of his time helping people in now they're creating a second Silicon Valley in Vegas for the same thing. He just wanted to make people really happy.
Love that. So we have a question or two from the audience, so I'm just going to ask you. These are surprise questions. What is a reasonable amount of debt to get into as a startup? Like, what do you feel, is there like a limit, or is there no limit, or what's your philosophy being a financial in that industry?
Yeah, there needs to be what we call in our industry a put, meaning there needs to be a point where you need to pull that plug and go back to work. You know, unfortunately, you have to be really honest with yourself. When it gets to a point where you can't sleep at night because you're worrying about the debt, you frankly need to reassess your life. Because at the end of the day, as you know, although we all would love to own our own business, we have to be very honest with ourselves. Not everyone was born to own their own business. So it doesn't mean you have to give up on your dream, but it can be something that you frankly will have to work on while you still you're able to pay the bills. Because in our business, we always say this, it doesn't matter how good you are at managing money, but if you're not around to manage the money and people don't know that you exist, you essentially don't exist. So you have a responsibility not only to your own life, but your own business and your employees to not have that stress. Because how can you possibly focus on a dream if you're worried about money? So everybody, it's a little bit different. Everyone's situations kind of hard to assess. But generally, I would say, I hope, it doesn't. You always have to make sure that you've got at least 3 to 6 months in the bank, and that should be your stopping point. But that's the thing, it doesn't have to be all or none. There's no reason why you can't work for somebody for the meanwhile and do what you enjoy. It might take a little longer, but you might live a little longer too with less stress, So.
And another question, was looking younger than you really are ever a challenge for you?
Yes.
Because we did talk about being a woman, but also you're very youthful looking, so.
Well, not really. I got 3 kids, but
come on. Yes.
But thank you. I won't even tell you how old I am, but it's true. This is a true story. When I started Smith Barney, easily looked way too young to be managing millions of dollars. So what I did do is I went to one of those stores, all the ladies know this store, where you can buy accessories, fake earrings, so I bought myself a fake pair of glasses. I truly did do this, and I wore it for years. And I had contact lenses because I had contacts at the time, so I was almost blind, so I couldn't see if I really had glasses. But I remember wearing them for years, and it was always really hard to see because they're just plastic. But I felt like I needed to do that because I felt like nobody would take me seriously. And when I worked in TV, this is true. When I was working in TV, all our competitors were famous people, right? And I had the shows. At that time, back in the day, I was doing Daisy Fuentes' America's Funniest Home Videos. At that time, that was the thing. Everybody wanted that show. And I knew that if they knew that I owned the business, nobody would take me seriously. So what I would do is I would go and work at the show, and I would say, well, my boss sent me. My boss said I should be here. I'm here for you. I'm working hard. And then every time contracts went out, everything went from our law firm, that we kind of convinced to work with us. And everything I sent priority mail. Remember back in the day, this is pre-FedEx, right? Everything was like those big labels and those big envelopes. So it looked kind of fancy. I had a Macintosh. So I was printing things like, it looked fancy back then. But that was it. Basically, fake it till you make it.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not lying, it's the truth. It's just like I was the boss and I was there too. I was living a double life.
So the last question I have for you tonight is, what are your plans? Like, what's next for Winnie? Maybe vacation? She doesn't like to take vacation. No vacation?
I haven't taken a vacation since 2007. This is true. My partner can attest to that. I don't encourage it, and I definitely don't do what I do. Do everything I told. Do the opposite. It's just not healthy. But the truth of the matter is, okay, first off, no more kids. Okay, one thing. So what we plan to do is I plan to take over and become financial advisor of the universe. Okay, that's it. But basically, what I do plan, we'll continue to expand our practice. And I'm hoping every company in America will have a corporate 529 plan. So all of you in this room, if you could help me out, if you know a company CEO, tell them they need to spend 5 minutes with Winnie, because I want to tell them, because I really want our children to be competitive and have an education. You know, every child we hear, I'm working with students from UC Irvine, great university. They're like, oh my goodness, I just graduated, I've got $100,000 in debt. Even if I wanted to go to grad school, I couldn't go to grad school, I just need to start working. So we need to be able to, I think, my goal is really to spend a little time devoted to that. And truthfully, that's kind of our nonprofit baby, right? It's going to take away from business. But aside from that, just hopefully my kids grow up soon so they start vacationing again.
So with that being said, thank you so much for coming. Was she awesome? Thank you.